Perpetual hype! Perpetual hype season is still going. That's why it's called Perpetual hype season. Kaldheim arrived, what, yesterday? And Time Spiral Remastered is just around the corner, yet here we have Strixhaven previews already. If you thought you had a moment to breathe, well, fuck you. And I'm sorry if I seem angry or overly passionate. Preview seasons make me feel this way. And as it's a perpetual preview season, I guess that's my secret cap. I'm always really fucking angry. Hi, I'm Vince, I'm unshaven, I need a haircut, and lockdown is still kicking my ass, like it kicks everyone's ass. We got our Strixhaven School of Mages previews today. Well, yesterday technically. I live in the UK, so I'm fucked for when these things come through. But it feels early. Kaldheim's Week of Metal happened on December 15th. That was when the first previews came through on the Tuesday. And the set launched on the 5th of February, although launches are also this amorphous blob now, right? Between like pre-releases, early access events, arena, modo, and paper all being different. Paper no longer existing as a relic of the before times. It's kind of hard to figure out exactly when things release. We're told they come to stores on set day, but you'll be playing it a week or two beforehand because of arena anyway. Strixhaven's released on the 23rd of April, so there were 7 weeks, give or take, a couple of days between Kaldheim's first previews and its release, and there's 9 weeks between Strixhaven's first previews and its release. Which is strange. I thought when I went back to compare these ready for this video, I was going to find out that they were basically the same. There's nothing really to worry about. And I was also going to point out how Kaldheim arguably has more of an excuse, as it was over the Christmas holiday periods. They want to keep us all, you know, perpetually hyped.
He said it! He said it!
By giving us previews over the Christmas period. But it was a shorter period of time. And then if you add to the fact that Strixhaven has a set coming out between its first preview now and it, which is the remastered, the remake version of Time Spiral, which I'm very fucking excited for, I'll have you know, so we'll be talking about that on the channel. But it's just weird that 9 weeks out from the set coming out, we're getting preview. It's kind of crazy at this point. I checked Zendikar Rising as well. The first previews were on September the 1st, with the set landing in stores on September the 25th. Approximately 4 weeks later. There's got to be a reason for this. There's probably some deep marketing strategy at play here that I'm not really familiar with. But honestly, with Mark Rosewater's like day-long tweet fest where he nervously explained to everyone how this isn't Harry Potter, I'm wondering if they're trying to get ahead of that sort of thing, or trying to get us set up for it not being Harry Potter, to then perhaps drop us with a Harry Potter secret lair. Rosewater was desperately trying to let us know that this trope existed prior to J.K. Rowling and Harry Potter, explaining to us that schools for exceptional people, wizards and wizarding schools existed way before any of that. And honestly, that doesn't really matter, Mark. Like, if you're going to make a TV show about people on a spaceship exploring space, that thing goes back to like pulp sci-fi, back to the turn, like, you know, early 19th century, 20th century. I'm really bad with the whole thing. But people are still going to compare it to Star Trek regardless. Like, that's just what's going to happen. You can't avoid it. So spending so much energy trying to dissuade people of that is kind of pointless. If anything, you want your product to convince us. And honestly, I think Strixhaven's going to do that. So that whole thing was kind of weird. So with that out of the way, let's have a look at what Wizards have revealed to us so far. For each house, we got splash art, a command, and a little blurb. So let's go through them. This is Lorehold. They're the red-white house, and I'm actually super impressed with their ability to move away from the Boros is for war feel that red-white often has in other sets outside of Ravnica. We have a strong presence of Loxodons within the house, both in the art of the charm and in this splash art, and on one of the boosters too. And I'm a big fan of the Loxodons as a race in the canon. They're wearing adventuring gear and aviator helmets, summoning constructs of rock from books, and firing fucking lasers from guns made from scrolls. This visual identity is wonderful. I'm in love with it, and I think at the moment this may be my favourite house. If you told me my favourite house going into Strixhaven would be the red-white one, I would have told you to go and get the fuck out of town. The command makes spirit tokens, it sacks permanents to draw cards, it lightning helixes, and it pumps the front end and gives indestructible. Most of this is pretty standard fare for this colour combination, but sacking a permanent to draw cards is interesting, and there's not really something you often see in white or red, so it's cool if this will be part of this house's identity. They've done quite well with moving away from like attack, or attack and double damage that a lot of red-white legendaries have done in the past, even like Winota giving them like a sneak stuff into play sort of thing. So it'd be cool if we get some sort of sack permanents draw cards in red-white in this set in a legendary, and I'm here for it. At 5 mana, I don't think this command will see much play outside of standard, but the hints of what the house does, well, It's promising. The Prismari, my R's are often soft. The Prismari are the theatre geeks. A blue-red guild aligned with performance and expressing oneself with the elements, to use their blurb. So we're talking some sort of middle ground between fire poi-wielding hippies and the benders from Avatar. I really like that they're putting theatre and performance into another colour pairing here with another organisation that isn't Rakdos, because at the moment, a lot of that, we see like theatres and theatrics as like the carnival clowns of Rakdos. To see that another colour pairing is actually really cool. The card itself is electrolyzed if it started doing yoga and become a lot more flexible. It does damage but not split. It can draw 2 cards and discard 2 cards. It can make a treasure token and it can blow up artifacts. I guess it's probably like a Braid and Is It Charm fucked, and somehow a golden crown falls out about 50% of the time. I like it a lot, and I'd say it's playable in older formats where Colligan Command sees play, but that isn't really commonly the case anymore, so it's a maybe. I guess Pioneer and Historic are going to like this. Quandrix are the math magicians, or math is magic, as they're saying. The fucking nerds. This is my favourite character we've seen besides the Loxodon with the aviator cap. These glasses are cool. The fact that they're summoning a D20 gives me hope that we might see an allusion to an extracurricular activity where people play D&D outside of class. Simic being the math nerds is funny to me because it means they have the most applicable real-world skills coming out of this school, college, or university, and I'm allowed to say that because I have an English degree. The Quandrix command feels the most situational. It counters certain types of cards, it bounces creatures or pumps creatures with counters, or shuffles cards into library from graveyard. Honestly, the least flashy of the cycle, which is nice considering how much R&D love blue-green and keep giving them the best of the cycles, or just like outright the best cards in sets. So that's nice. Silverquill are the closest in the set to come to evoking Harry Potter for me so far. These lot look like the posh bastards' kids, right? It's Slytherin. It's all the rich people's kids who come to school and pick on other kids for having second-hand clothing. And I should know, I was the kid picked upon for having second-hand clothing. This is easily the most powerful of the command cycle if it was at instant speed, removal, card draw, combat trick, and reanimation. This card does it all, but at sorcery speed it feels fair rather than oppressive. And also we see here this change of wording for CMC. I like this new wording, so we haven't got converted mana cost anymore, we've got this. And ultimately, I think that's just better. There's not really much more to say about it there. It's succinct and it's clean and I like it. Is the output better or worth the confusion of having cards say different things across Magic's lifetime? On the long enough timeline? Yeah, probably. So, yeah, I like it. There is absolutely no way in hell one of the factions didn't draw some sort of parallel to Harry Potter, because this is a school for wizards, and Harry Potter is the most famous pop culture thing where there's a school for wizards. It's impossible that those parallels wouldn't be drawn. So far, I think with what we've seen, they've done very well to move away, or at least distance themselves from that with very distinct visual identities. I think this Writers Guild, the White-Black Guild, which I argued I should probably fit into from my profession and my education itself, but they seem the closest to a direct parallel with Slytherin. What I would like to see is that they don't turn out to be the bad guys, the villainous faction, because if they do, then it's too much of a parallel and it's a bit derivative, to quote Danny DeVito. Then lastly, we have the Witherbloom, the botanical goth biomages. They mention herbs and zombie crocodiles, and this makes them the only house where I think they are too similar or adjacent to their Ravnican counterparts. Whilst I was pleasantly surprised with Lorehold, they are out there and different from what we come to expect from Red-White, but adventure and scripture and relics also feel at home in that colour pairing. Goth gardeners, well, that's just literally the fucking Golgari. I think the other thing they run a risk of with this set, and we're seeing it a little bit on social media already, is not just the Harry Potter parallels, but people saying it's just Ravnica 2 or 3 or 4 or 5.0, which is going to happen with any 2-color pairing. And we saw this a little bit with the clans of Tarkia, but they were differentiated enough that people stopped really making that comparison. And they served in Tarkia as a good way of showing that Azorius doesn't necessarily mean, you know, military police state thing with judges and stuff. The Ujjatai clan looked very different and thematically were very different, even if mechanically they had some similar stuff like tapping things down and stuff. The fact that Ravnica, like, at least not the first necessarily, but they popularized the names for the color pairings, it's a creative hole that Magic needs to circumvent quite often, and it's a difficult thing to do because people will always go back to that. Same with shards and any of these things. But over time, we will see more and more organizations or groups that use these color pairings, and although mechanically might be similar, because that's just how the mechanics of Magic works in game balancing within the color pie, they will be thematically or philosophically not the same. The Colligan's Brood are not the Rakdos, for example. So far, so good, honestly. Like I said, I'm not getting derivative or reductive Harry Potter vibes, barring that one. And I'm also not getting the young adult fiction rendition of Ravnica's tropes and themes, which I was fearful of, outside of perhaps these goth bio mages of the Witherbloom. I want to say clan then, the Witherbloom house. So, I'm going to talk about some reprints and some frames and stuff in a moment, but there's two things I really want to cover before we moved on. Firstly, Wizards of the Coast trying to distance the brand from Harry Potter is nothing but a good thing in my eyes. Comparisons are inevitable due to the subject matter, and personally I don't dislike Harry Potter. It was never much part of my upbringing, my growing up. I wasn't into it then. I've retroactively gone back and watched the movies and enjoyed them. So I have no problem with the source material itself, and also in similar ways that Godzilla fit Ikoria as an alternate skin, I can see Harry Potter working in the same way. However, the big elephant in the room that I'm going to address now is that J.K. Rowling is definitely transphobic, and I'd rather she didn't profit off of a game or hobby that I love. A million people have explained the situation far better than I will. The professor recently did a video on it. He pointed over to ContraPoints. I agree that's a good place to go as well to hear a discussion of those topics. And there's loads of people talking about this online that I think would cover it in more detail than I will. In short, her ramblings are short-sighted and ignorant, and they serve to do harm to an already marginalised people. These people simply want to exist, and people as influential as J.K. Rowling going off the tirades that she does, and these like faux caring arguments that she makes, it does nothing but make that existing harder for people. And the UK is arguably getting quite bad because of mainstream media siding with or giving a voice to J.K. fucking Rowling. I hope to God there isn't a Harry Potter secret lair. Again, not because of the intellectual property itself, or that it's a bad fit. I mean, that was never really my complaint for Walking Dead. It was an obvious one to point out, but it was never my issue. My issue with Walking Dead was almost exclusively the fact that they were mechanically unique and FOMO-inducing mechanically unique. Something I think Wizards of the Coast should avoid at all costs with Magic. So on one hand, I hope if there is a Harry Potter secret lair, which I really hope there isn't, that's not the case. Mechanically unique for a short time period is awful, and please don't fucking do that again. But my problem is I don't want J.K. Rowling profiteering off this game because she is a bad person, to put it lightly. The biggest red flag around this is that we haven't seen Wizards of the Coast explicitly say that there is no Harry Potter crossover. And for those who are desperately trying to defend Strixhaven, instead of letting the wonderful visual design and world building of itself defend itself, it's strange that we haven't seen him explicitly denounce a crossover. This makes me think, because no one is explicitly, as far as I know, saying there isn't one, there's gonna be one. Because they aren't saying there isn't one. If there wasn't one, why aren't they saying there isn't one? At best, Rowling is a misguided and confused individual doing harm to other people who have less privilege than her by a large margin. At worst, she is a hateful, hateful person. And both of those things I don't want profiteering off the game, so I really, really hope we don't see a Harry Potter secret lair or Harry Potter skins or whatever. But no one said we aren't, so I think it's coming. And then lastly, I just want to touch again upon that people comparing this to Ravnica. It's inevitable, but as long as the houses have their own visual identity and their own thematic identity, even if it's not mechanically unique to say the Izzet or whatever, then I think that those comparisons aren't really... not valid. Of course they're valid. It's two colour pairings, guild and house. Which do you prefer and all that sort of stuff. But I don't think it matters much, right? And on a longer and longer timeline, we'll see more and more organisations and groups use colour pairings like this. So, I don't give a fuck. What I will say is that I will probably avoid using the new house names to describe modern and legacy decks because I like the old history of Magic. I like that Abzan used to be called junk. I like this stuff. It might sound gatekeepery. Some fucking bottom feeders on Twitter will try and needle me and say he's being a gatekeeper by doing this, but I'm not. I just like the history, the rich history, the tapestry, the canon of this stuff. At the same time, I won't shame you for using those things. I might playfully be resistant to be old man shouting at Cloud Boomer because it's fun, but I'm not looking to exclude everyone. The obvious thing is just don't be a cunt. Call whatever the fuck you want, whatever the fuck you want. I mean, help new players get in by explaining things, but don't correct them. If they call their deck Slytherin or whatever the fuck the house is called, don't be like, well, actually, no, it's Orzhov. Like, don't be like that. That's not what we need. Unless you are evidently being playful and that relationship allows that playfulness. Just don't do this to some random person you never met before. Don't be a cunt. And then finally, we come to Strixhaven's very own expeditions. The Mystical Archive, also known as the Biblioplex. There's two names in the description. I think it's just Mystical Archive. This is their own unique frame treatment, and they've picked spells, which is kind of similar to the Invocations in a way, but they've picked spells throughout time and space that are taught in the school. These look wonderful, honestly. The Demonic Tutor, Opt, and Path to Exile. I wouldn't play that Opt or Path myself, but I think they're still pretty nice looking. There's also going to be Japanese variants like the War of the Spark Walkers had, which can be found in Japanese product and in all language collector boosters as well. And these look fucking awesome. I actually really want one of these Demonic Tutors because it's absolutely phenomenal. In some ways, it's a little weird to see the style and aesthetic be for Strixhaven's unique selling point. It feels like this could have been reserved for a return to Kamigawa or similarly Japanese-inspired plane as a way of involving more Japanese artists and creatives in that return to make it more cohesive and more inclusive in some ways. But that isn't entirely out of the question just because it's been used here. The really impressive thing about all this is that these Mystic Archive cards aren't going to be exclusively in collector's boosters like we've seen them before do with things like Expeditions, but they've took them away from us and sold them back to us in other products. There's going to be one in every set booster, one in every draft booster, and only the foils are available in collector boosters. And honestly, I don't really mind that at all. The fact that a kid can still open a Demonic Tutor in their normal draft booster and now have a Demonic Tutor to play with is fantastic. The fact that foil versions of that are in collector's boosters to help people be collectors or to up the value of other products and hunt the whales or whatever, that's also fine by me, because the game pieces will be available elsewhere. So to reiterate, the Mystic Archive, there's one in every draft booster, there's one in every set booster, and there's 3 in every collector's boosters, and those can include foils. This means you can open a draft booster, and you can open one rare like Demonic Tutor, which will probably be a mythic to be fair, and one rare from the set as well, and get double rare booster packs. This is added value, this is them putting things, and this is unusual, right? I've complained about this for a long time. This is them putting more value back into the draft packs, and I can't help but have to put my hands up or clap at the same time above my head without the mic in the way, I don't know. But applaud this, because I've been longing for this for the longest time. I don't want to sound condescending, which this might sound like, but I'm just proud to see this happening. Like, they've taken on board some of the criticism, some of the very valid criticism of their recent business practices, and they're undoing some of the harm they've done. It's not wiping the slate clean in terms of like predatory practices and stuff, and the arena economy is still dog shit, but this is still really fucking cool. And it makes me happy. Like, both the design of the Strixhaven houses and this are both really fucking good news. So I'm hyped. I'm fucking hyped. My final point's going to be a negative, because that's what some of you come here for, but it's a minor one. I'm a little bit, I guess, stressed out. No, that's not the word I'm looking for. I'm a little bit, I don't know, taken aback or frustrated by the sheer volume of frame treatments we're seeing. Every set has a dozen secret layers and stuff to go with it, and then frames within the sets, and then alternates of those frames. And recently I got Anguish Unmaking on MTGO in a cube game on stream, and I was actually for a minute thrown off as I didn't even understand what colour the spell that was being cast was. This is a rarity, honestly, and most frame treatments like the ones we're seeing here, the mana symbols in the normal place, there's a frame, there is some of the visual language we've come to expect from Magic cards. The occasional break from that is cool and everything, and I like alters and weird stuff too, but fuck me, there is so many of them now. Some of them I love, like this new Demonic Tutor, and some I feel miss the mark where they no longer resemble anything like a Magic card. And that's fine in small doses, but like having just a floating reference to some pop culture phenomenon like a metal band poster, but with no grounding in the game that we see that it's a piece to play in said game, is just strange. I didn't know what this card was, what colour it was, or what it was doing. It's just a bizarre thing that it's a minor niggle. Like, it doesn't bug me enough to like demand they stop doing it, but it is a thing that's going to probably get worse over time. So what do you think? Are you excited about the Strixhaven houses? Do you think my criticisms and observations are valid? Do you think I missed something? Do you think I'm being unfair or too nice? I bet people are going to say I'm being too nice. Are you excited for the new frame treatments? And if you're going to comment telling me that you love J.K. Rowling, she did nothing wrong, just don't fucking bother. Or do it, and I can mute you forevermore so that you don't show up in my time and spat on your hateful shit. I've been Vince, also known as PleasantKenobi on the internet. Hit that like button, smash that bell, subscribe, and all that shit, and I'll see you in the next one. Ta-ta for now.